They laughed at her. They underestimated her, and that mistake cost them everything. Before the story begins, take a second to subscribe to the channel and comment below. What is your profession, and have you ever experienced something strange or unfair at work? Now listen carefully, because this story proves one timeless truth: never underestimate a woman. When Officer Emily Carter transferred to the Westbridge Police Precinct, she expected resistance, long hours, and the usual stress that came with learning a new district. What she did not expect was the quiet hostility that settled over her like a fog the moment she walked through the front doors. Emily had what people liked to call a classic American look: neat blonde hair pulled back tight, clear blue eyes, a straight posture that came from years in uniform, and a calm, steady voice. She had served 8 years in another city, earned solid evaluations, and built a reputation for being methodical and reliable. She wasn't flashy, and she wasn't loud. She believed in doing the job right. From the first briefing, it was clear she wasn't welcome. Captain Richard Hale, the precinct's commanding officer, barely glanced at her when she was introduced. He smirked, leaned back in his chair, and said, "So, this is our new transfer. You look more like you belong behind a desk than on the street." A few officers chuckled. Emily felt the heat rise in her face, but said nothing. Over the following weeks, the comments didn't stop. Hale questioned her reports in front of others, mocked her during roll call, and assigned her to tasks that had nothing to do with her experience: filing old records, managing evidence inventory, running errands no one else wanted. "Let's not send Carter," Hale would say during briefings. "This isn't exactly a job for someone like her." Someone like her. The words stayed with Emily long after the room emptied. She tried to brush it off. She told herself that every new place had growing pains, but there was something different about Hale's tone. It wasn't just skepticism, it was enjoyment. He seemed to take pleasure in reminding her that in his eyes, she didn't belong. Emily started paying closer attention. She noticed how conversations stopped when Hale walked into a room, how certain officers seemed nervous around him, while others acted overly friendly. She noticed expensive watches on a public salary, and how Hale was often unavailable late at night, especially on weekends. One evening, while finishing paperwork, she overheard 2 detectives talking quietly near the lockers. "Captain won't be in tomorrow," one said. "Let me guess, another conference?" They both laughed, but it wasn't a happy sound. Emily didn't jump to conclusions, but her instincts, sharpened by years on the job, told her something was off. The bullying continued. During one incident briefing, Hale interrupted her mid-sentence. "Carter," he said, shaking his head, "you're overthinking this. Try to keep it simple. This isn't a book club." The room went silent. Emily closed her notebook slowly and met his eyes. "Understood, sir," she said calmly. That night, she didn't go home right away. She sat in her car outside the precinct, watching the building, replaying every interaction in her mind. Anger flickered, but she pushed it down. Anger made mistakes. Planning didn't. She made a decision. If Captain Hale believed she was weak, invisible, or incapable, she would let him keep believing it. People who underestimate others often reveal more than they intend to. Emily began doing what she did best: observing, listening, and waiting. She started noting Hale's schedule, his late arrivals, his early departures, the names that appeared repeatedly in his phone logs when paperwork crossed her desk. She noticed a pattern involving certain nightclubs on the east side of the city, places that had a history of complaints but never seemed to face serious consequences. Whenever those clubs were mentioned, Hale shut the conversation down. "Not our priority. Bigger fish to fry." Emily wrote everything down: dates, times, locations. She didn't know yet how it would all come together, but she knew one thing for certain: this wasn't just about revenge. This was about the truth. Emily understood something that many people forgot. Trust is rarely taken, it is given, slowly, to those who seem harmless. And in Captain Hale's eyes, she was exactly that. She changed her approach. Instead of keeping her distance, she began engaging more during conversations. She laughed lightly at Hale's jokes. She asked his opinion on cases, even when she didn't need it. She stayed late, just often enough to be noticed. At first, Hale was suspicious. He watched her closely, clearly expecting sarcasm or resistance. When none came, his attitude shifted. "Well," he said one evening as they both reached for the coffee machine, "looks like you're finally settling in." "Trying to," Emily replied with a small smile. "Every place has its rhythm. I'm just learning yours." That line landed exactly where she wanted it to. Over the next few weeks, their conversations became longer. Hale liked to talk about himself, his years on the force, the cases he'd single-handedly solved, the connections he claimed to have all over the city. Emily listened carefully, encouraging him with nods and quiet interest. She never volunteered information. She let him fill the silence. Soon, Hale began inviting her along on inspections and informal meetings. Nothing official, just quick drives, casual stops, late-night check-ins. Emily noticed how often these trips brought them near certain clubs, glowing with neon lights and guarded by men who clearly weren't there for decoration. Hale waved at people who didn't look surprised to see him. "You know these places?" Emily asked once, keeping her tone light. Hale smirked. "In this city, it's better if people know you. Keeps things calm." Emily didn't respond. She didn't need to. What she needed was proof. She started cross-referencing financial records, property ownerships, and incident reports. The same names appeared again and again, often connected through shell companies and third-party managers. The paperwork was messy, but deliberately so. One night, Hale invited her to join him after hours. "Just a quick stop," he said. "Good to be seen sometimes." The location was a private club hidden behind an unmarked door. Inside, the air was thick with smoke and quiet tension. Emily kept her expression neutral as Hale greeted people with confidence. She watched the exchanges, the subtle nods, the envelopes that changed hands quickly. Later, as they sat in a back room, Hale leaned back and sighed. "You know, Carter," he said, "this job isn't just about rules. It's about understanding how the city really works." Emily met his gaze. "I'm starting to see that," he laughed. "Good. Most people never do." That was the moment Emily realized how far he was willing to go. Hale believed she was impressed, that she admired him, that she was becoming part of his inner circle. What he didn't realize was that Emily was memorizing everything. Names were mentioned, locations, routes, schedules. He spoke freely, emboldened by his own confidence. He bragged about how certain operations were protected, how problems were handled quietly, and how no one ever looked too closely. "They won't," he said with a grin, "as long as I'm here." Emily nodded, her heart pounding, not with fear, but with clarity. This wasn't just corruption. It was organized, systematic, and deeply rooted. She went home that night and organized her notes. She backed up files in multiple locations. She recorded timelines and created copies of everything she could legally access. She knew the risk. If Hale suspected her, things could turn dangerous fast. But she also knew something else. He had already underestimated her, and that mistake was about to catch up with him. Emily waited. She knew timing mattered just as much as evidence. Acting too soon would only alert Hale and give him time to cover his tracks. So she continued playing her role, professional, agreeable, and quietly observant. Meanwhile, she built a case. She submitted anonymous tips through internal channels designed for sensitive information. She flagged irregularities in financial audits without attaching her name. She reached out, carefully, to an internal affairs investigator she trusted from her previous department. "I can't say much yet," Emily told him during a discreet phone call, "but when this comes across your desk, don't ignore it." Weeks passed. Hale grew more comfortable, more careless. His jokes became louder, his confidence sharper. He spoke openly about controlling supply routes, about owning certain parts of the city. Emily felt a quiet sadness beneath her determination. This was a man entrusted with public safety, someone people relied on, and he had turned that trust into a shield for his own gain. The breakthrough came unexpectedly. During a routine review of seized assets, Emily noticed a discrepancy, items logged as destroyed that had no supporting documentation. The trail led directly to one of the clubs Hale frequented. She forwarded the information, along with her compiled evidence, to Internal Affairs. Then she waited again. The investigation moved faster than she expected. Unmarked cars began appearing near the precinct. Auditors requested files that hadn't been touched in years. Hale grew tense, snapping at officers, demanding updates he was no longer entitled to receive. One morning, Emily arrived to find the building buzzing with whispers. "Did you hear?" someone murmured. "Internal Affairs is here," another replied. Hale was called into a closed-door meeting. Hours passed. No one spoke. When the door finally opened, Hale walked out pale and furious, followed by two men in dark suits. "Captain Richard Hale, you are relieved of duty effective immediately." The room froze. Emily watched silently as Hale's badge was taken, his office sealed, and his authorities stripped away in a matter of minutes. He looked around, searching for familiar faces, allies, any sign of support. His eyes met Emily's. For the first time since she'd met him, there was no smirk, no mockery, just realization. The investigation uncovered everything: the connections to illegal operations, the protection schemes, the misuse of authority. More arrests followed, more names surfaced. Emily was questioned extensively. She told the truth, clearly, calmly, and with evidence to support every word. When it was over, she was cleared of any wrongdoing and formally commended for her integrity and patience. A week later, the precinct gathered for a briefing. The new interim captain stood at the front of the room. "I want to make something very clear," he said. "What happened here is a reminder. Rank does not place anyone above accountability, and courage doesn't always announce itself loudly." His eyes briefly met Emily's. After the meeting, several officers approached her quietly. "I'm sorry," one said. "I should have spoken up," said another. Emily nodded. She didn't need apologies, she needed change, and slowly that change began. Life at the precinct felt different after Hale was gone. The air was lighter, conversations more open. Officers who once kept their heads down now spoke freely. Policies were reviewed, procedures tightened. Emily was reassigned to active investigations, her skills finally recognized. She worked long hours, not out of obligation, but purpose. Each case reminded her why she had joined the force in the first place. One evening, as she organized files, the interim captain stopped by her desk. "You handled an impossible situation with professionalism," he said. "That takes strength." Emily looked up. "I just did my job." He smiled. "Sometimes that's the hardest part." Outside the precinct, news of the scandal spread quickly. Public trust had been shaken, but transparency helped rebuild it. The department implemented new oversight measures, and external reviews became standard practice. Emily became an example, not because she sought attention, but because her actions spoke louder than any speech. She was invited to speak at training sessions, sharing lessons about ethics, patience, and awareness. She never mentioned revenge. She spoke about responsibility. "Power," she told one group of recruits, "reveals who we are when no one is watching." At home, in quiet moments, Emily reflected on everything that had happened: the doubt, the humiliation, the careful planning. She felt no triumph, only resolve. She hadn't won because she was smarter or tougher. She had won because she refused to be invisible. Months later, she passed the old East Side clubs during a patrol. The lights were off, the doors closed, the streets were quieter. She felt a sense of peace. Not because justice was perfect, but because it had moved forward. Emily's story spread quietly through the department and beyond, not as gossip, but as a reminder. A reminder that strength isn't always loud, that intelligence often hides behind patience, and that underestimation is a dangerous mistake. She continued her career with steady determination, earning promotions through consistency rather than noise. New officers, men and women alike, looked to her as proof that integrity still mattered. One afternoon, a young recruit approached her after a briefing. "Ma'am," he said, "how did you stay calm when everyone doubted you?" Emily considered the question. "Because their doubt wasn't about me," she replied. "It was about their own limits." She walked out of the precinct that evening as the sun dipped below the skyline. Another shift complete, another day of doing the work that mattered. And somewhere, in offices far away, policies had changed because one woman refused to accept disrespect as her fate. So, remember this: never underestimate someone because they don't look like what you expect. Never confuse silence with weakness, and never assume power belongs only to the loudest voice in the room, because sometimes the most dangerous person is the one you never saw coming.